Charlie Kirk never imagined that his life of influence would turn into a nightmare. From mysterious disappearances to shadowy surveillance, every step he took was being watched and someone was willing to do anything to destroy him. Charlie Kirk was a man who commanded attention wherever he went. His speeches drew large crowds, his social media posts sparked heated debates, and his influence in political circles seemed untouchable. To most people, he was untouchable. But behind the public persona, there were shadows creeping closer than anyone realized. It began with minor incidents that at first seemed trivial, almost like coincidences. A broken window on his car one morning, a phone call in the middle of the night with no one on the other end, an envelope slipped under his office door with nothing inside but a single, cryptic symbol. Each incident alone could be shrugged off as bad luck or coincidence, but together, they painted a picture of someone deliberately watching, someone deliberately testing him. Charlie's security team initially assumed these were random acts, petty harassment from someone frustrated by his influence. But the pattern quickly grew too precise to ignore. Cameras in his home and office, which were supposed to provide a complete record of activity, were mysteriously tampered with. Entire hours of footage were missing, as if someone had methodically erased evidence of their presence. Even stranger, no signs of forced entry were found in his home or office, suggesting the intruder either knew exactly how to bypass the systems or had help from someone inside. The thought was chilling. Someone close, someone trusted, could be involved. The tension around Charlie grew. He found himself constantly checking for threats, altering routines, and questioning people he had known for years. Simple things, like a walk to his car or a late-night trip to the office, became exercises in paranoia. Security reports detailed unexplained entries, strange footprints outside restricted areas, and unusual signals on electronic devices. Experts couldn't explain them all, but the message was clear. Someone wanted him to feel vulnerable. Friends and colleagues noticed the change. Charlie, usually composed and confident, now moved through his daily life with an unshakable sense of unease. The city that had admired him began to feel like a labyrinth of invisible eyes. Each small, unsettling incident hinted at a greater threat lurking in the shadows, a danger that could strike without warning. What had begun as minor harassment was evolving into a coordinated, relentless form of psychological pressure. In the quiet moments, when the office lights dimmed and the streets grew silent, Charlie realized that he was being hunted not by one person, but by an unseen force meticulously orchestrating every step of his life. The sense of safety he once took for granted had vanished, leaving only the cold certainty that something far more sinister was unfolding. The first real shock came when Charlie's trusted assistant disappeared without a trace. She wasn't just an employee. She was the one person who knew the ins and outs of his daily life, someone who handled his private schedules, emails, and sensitive meetings. One morning, she didn't show up at the office. Calls went unanswered, her apartment was dark, and friends reported she had vanished without leaving a note. At first, it seemed like a sudden, personal decision to leave her life behind, but the more Charlie and his team investigated, the more they realized this was no ordinary disappearance. When authorities finally gained access to her apartment, what they found was terrifying. Drawers had been opened and tossed aside, files were missing, and walls were marked with strange symbols that no one could immediately decipher. The place didn't just look ransacked, it looked staged, like someone had wanted to send a message. Every detail suggested the disappearance was not random, and that the person behind it had a clear goal. Whoever had taken her knew what information she carried, and by extension, what she could reveal about Charlie. As days turned into weeks, the psychological pressure on Charlie increased. He began to notice subtle changes around him, small signs that something or someone was always nearby. Phones would die unexpectedly, personal items would be slightly out of place, and his security footage occasionally glitched at key moments. The absence of his assistant had left a gaping hole in his defenses. Without her, schedules went unchecked, and private conversations were left exposed to unseen eyes. Charlie realized that the disappearance wasn't just about removing a person. It was about exposing vulnerabilities, creating chaos, and shaking his sense of control. Investigators were puzzled. There were no ransom demands, no threats left behind, no clear motive beyond creating fear. It was a calculated move designed to destabilize him. Friends and colleagues grew wary, unsure of who they could trust, and the sense of paranoia seeped into every aspect of his life. Even routine trips to his office or personal errands felt risky. Charlie understood that this was more than a personal attack, it was a carefully planned message. No one was safe, and every move he made was being watched. The disappearance of someone so close sent a ripple of unease throughout his life. It was the first time Charlie truly felt the weight of the danger surrounding him. What began as minor threats had escalated into a full-blown psychological assault, and it became clear that whoever was behind it would not stop until they had pushed him to the edge, exposing weaknesses he hadn't even known existed. The city that had once celebrated him now seemed like a labyrinth of hidden dangers, and Charlie realized that the next move could be the most dangerous yet. The second wave of terror arrived in a form no one could have anticipated. One morning, a small unmarked package was delivered to Charlie's home. It contained nothing more than a plain USB drive and a folded piece of paper. Curiosity mixed with dread as Charlie picked it up, sensing immediately that this was no ordinary delivery. The note, scrawled in sharp, almost frantic handwriting, contained only 4 chilling words. "You can't hide." There was no signature, no hint of who had sent it. The message was short, but the implication was terrifyingly clear. Someone had been watching him closely, and they wanted him to know it. When he plugged the USB into a secure computer, a single video file appeared. The footage was unsettling in the extreme. Every camera angle seemed carefully positioned to capture him in his most private moments, walking through his home, entering his office, even reviewing documents that were meant to remain confidential. The realization hit hard. The person responsible had intimate knowledge of his daily life, far beyond what any ordinary intruder could achieve. It was surveillance on a level that suggested planning, obsession, and resources. Whoever was behind this had infiltrated his life completely, watching him when he thought he was safest. The team of investigators that Charlie called and traced the digital footprint of the file, hoping for some clue, a location, a metadata tag, a hint of the sender's identity. But every lead disappeared into nothing. It was as if the person who had created the video had planned every detail to leave no trace, slipping away like a ghost. The sense of violation was profound. The surveillance wasn't just about knowing where he was. It was a psychological attack designed to make him doubt every space he occupied, every person around him, every action he took. The USB drive became a symbol of vulnerability, a reminder that the world he thought he controlled was no longer his own. As days passed, Charlie noticed changes in his behavior. He began to second-guess routines, to question security protocols, to wonder if cameras he trusted could be manipulated. Even his closest allies were no longer beyond suspicion. The psychological strain was immense, and the sense of urgency grew. Every movement felt like it could be anticipated, every decision scrutinized by an unseen adversary. It was a new level of threat, one that didn't require direct confrontation, only the constant, suffocating awareness that someone was always observing, always calculating, and always a step ahead. The USB drive had made it clear. The danger was no longer theoretical, and the real battle had only just begun. The tension around Charlie reached a breaking point when the fourth disturbing development shocked the entire city. A prominent politician, one who had publicly opposed Charlie on multiple occasions, was found dead under circumstances that defied explanation. The death was sudden, violent, and eerily precise, leaving authorities struggling for answers. Although no direct evidence linked Charlie to the incident, the timing was impossible to ignore. The city buzzed with rumors, and whispers suggested that someone was orchestrating events far larger than a personal vendetta. The message was clear: no one connected to Charlie was safe, and the forces at work were both ruthless and patient. As the investigation into the politician's death unfolded, Charlie discovered another horrifying revelation. Hidden cameras had been installed inside his office, capturing every meeting, every confidential discussion, and even private moments that should have remained unseen. It wasn't just the footage that terrified him, it was the realization that someone had spent weeks, possibly months, planning this level of intrusion. The cameras were sophisticated, capable of transmitting data without leaving a trace, and the thought that someone had been observing him so closely sent waves of paranoia through his life. Every ally could be an informant, every conversation could be manipulated, and every action scrutinized. The psychological impact was immediate. Charlie began to question his surroundings, constantly scanning for anomalies and inconsistencies. Even routine office tasks became exercises in caution. Security teams were deployed to sweep for devices, yet some of the cameras seemed impervious to detection. It became evident that this wasn't a random attack but a meticulously orchestrated effort to destabilize him completely. Whoever was behind it understood not just his physical routines but his mental vulnerabilities. The threat had evolved from mere harassment to a calculated campaign of control and intimidation. The city itself seemed to shift under the weight of these events. Friends and colleagues grew distant, hesitant to appear too close, for fear of becoming targets themselves. Meetings once held in confidence were postponed or canceled, and every communication was double-checked for signs of interference. Charlie realized that the assassination plot was no longer about a single act of violence. It was about breaking him mentally, forcing him to doubt every decision and question every relationship. Each discovery added another layer to a terrifying puzzle, one in which he had no clear opponent, only the sense of being constantly observed and manipulated. The invisible force pressing down on him was relentless, and Charlie understood that escaping it would require more than caution. It would demand strategy, resilience, and a willingness to confront the shadows hiding in plain sight. The final wave of terror came swiftly, each development more unnerving than the last. Charlie narrowly survived a car accident that, at first glance, seemed like a tragic coincidence. The brakes had failed at a crucial moment, and the steering system had been tampered with in ways that no ordinary mechanic could replicate. For Charlie, it was a stark warning. The threat was no longer just psychological. It had become physical, immediate, and lethal. Every time he left his home or entered his vehicle, he felt the weight of unseen eyes, aware that someone could strike at any second. As if the accident wasn't enough, forensic experts later discovered traces of a rare poison on personal items Charlie had touched. The substance was not something easily obtained. It suggested access to clandestine networks and specialized knowledge. Charlie's personal safety, once ensured by trusted teams and secure environments, now felt fragile. The realization that someone had not only infiltrated his life but also had the means to kill him quietly and efficiently sent waves of fear through every waking moment. Even his most familiar surroundings had become potential death traps. Investigators uncovered a hidden network of operatives, linked to international crime syndicates, all seemingly focused on him. It was a revelation that expanded the danger from personal vendetta to global conspiracy. Each operative had been strategically placed to monitor, manipulate, and control his movements. They were shadows in airports, by his office, and even near his home, always present, yet invisible. Charlie now understood that his life was a chessboard, every move anticipated by opponents who had resources far beyond his comprehension. The psychological pressure intensified when encrypted messages were discovered, hinting at possible betrayals from within his closest circle. Friends, colleagues, and advisors, people he had trusted implicitly, could have been feeding information to the network. The sense of isolation grew, making it impossible to know who was truly loyal and who was part of a larger scheme. Even his most intimate conversations were potentially compromised, leaving him trapped in a world where trust was a dangerous luxury. By the end, Charlie realized that the assassination plot had never been solely about politics or influence. It was about total control, a demonstration of power designed to dismantle him mentally, physically, and emotionally. The city he had once dominated now felt like a labyrinth of danger, where every shadow could conceal a threat and every decision could have deadly consequences. The relentless surveillance, orchestrated accidents, rare poisons, and intricate networks proved one terrifying truth. No one, no matter how powerful, could escape the reach of those determined to watch, manipulate, and ultimately destroy. Charlie's world had become a high-stakes game of survival, where the line between life and death was invisible, fragile, and constantly shifting.